This is Jim from the Pain PT. Good to see everybody today. I have another success story here. I have Philippe coming from Canada here with us today, and I'm so excited for him to be here live and sharing his story. Hi, Philippe. How you doing?
I'm good, Jim. Glad to be here. Hi, everybody at home.
Yeah, we're so happy that you came on, and I'm always happy when people are willing to share the story because it's so helpful for so many people, and I know yours is going to resonate as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can start with your story.
Sure. Well, I guess for context, I've been an athlete my whole life, and being physical, being active has always been like a huge, huge passion for me. And so back in 2019, I started training for triathlons at a pretty high level. And then at the end of that first season, I won this race and qualified to represent Canada at the World Championships in my age group. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll carry on with this triathlon journey. And I really kind of doubled down with the training and with the intensity. 2020 kept training. Obviously, didn't get to compete because of the pandemic and all this. So I was like, well, let's just carry on and go into 2021. And it was about June 2021 when I was super fit, getting ready to come home to Canada for the summer to compete and go to World Championships in the Bahamas. And I was on a training ride in California. I think it was like a 90-mile bike ride or something from like LA to Oxnard and back. And I remember being at the halfway point and just starting to like get a little bit of pain in my knees. And oh, that's weird. Like try not to think too much of it, but started riding back and it was like 2 hours to ride back. And it was like not super painful, but a little bit painful. And usually what I would do if I got a little issue, something like this, I would just give it a few days and usually it would kind of like fix itself. But that one didn't go away. And over the next few days and few weeks, kept trying, and not only wasn't getting better, it seemed like it was getting worse. So kind of over the next few weeks, start to realize like, well, I guess I can't do triathlon right now because I can't bike, I can't run, and I'm not going to do a triathlon, which is swimming. So just kind of took a spiritual stance on it. I was like, all right, I guess like life, God is guiding me in a different direction. I'm meant to like not do this right now. So
You
I'll let
thought you
that
had
go.
at that time, you thought you had a type of injury or something like that, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, so the pain was like on kind of like where the quad attaches to the kneecap. So I thought I had some sort of like quad tendonitis.
Right.
And as I'm sure is the case for a lot of people, it's like once we kind of start to get into a story, we're like, oh, this must be it. And we just construct that narrative in our head and
Which would seem,
no one
here's
could
the
prove
thing,
it.
plausible, right? Because this is where people get confused. Like, okay, you're a high level athlete, you're training your body pretty hard. So naturally you'd think, okay, I must have strained something, damaged something there in the quad from cycling.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the pain is. And that's like usually if you have pain there, that's what the injury would be. Now it was always weird because it was on both sides. And I was like, huh, like that's kind of weird that like on the same day both knees would start hurting, but
Hmm.
here we are.
Yeah, and at the time you
Yeah.
didn't know any of this knowledge that you know now, right? You had no idea.
No idea whatsoever. So thus began a really long 2.5 year journey of trying to do, physio exercises and knees over toes guy stuff. And like would have moments where I could start running a little bit, but then it would come back. And obviously, at an emotional level, it was so incredibly hard because it felt like what I love most in life, or at least one of the things I love most in life, which is running, swimming, competing, playing soccer, jumping around, was taken away from me. And I felt like I was like a shell of myself. So obviously had to like, yeah, just kind of focus on other areas of my life. And there's a whole spiritual journey around like self-identity and saying I'm more than just an athlete. And of course we can talk about that. But everything kind of came to a head like in 2023. So, this carried on and on.
And all this time
And
you continue to have the pain there. You're continuing to suffer
continue to
basically
have
with
the
nothing
pain.
helping.
Yeah. And like it didn't hurt if I walked, but so day to day I could still do stuff, but I couldn't run, I couldn't bike, and I was always kind of living in fear, which sure is a lot of the case for a lot of people. It's just like it's always there, and there's always this like hesitancy of like, oh, can I do this? No, no. And I spent so much of my life playing offense with life, like what can I do? What can I accomplish? Now I felt like I was always playing defense and always kind of coy about what can I do and not do. And that felt so alien to me and like not the way I want to live, to be honest. Um, so so that was that. But then what kind of made things worse, but ultimately made things better is that one day in 2023, this is like around this time last year, actually, maybe September 2023, I woke up one morning and I had like pain in my lower back. I was like, huh, that's weird. Like, did I sleep funny? Like, what's up with that? Um, but the pain just kind of kept increasing for the next few days. So all of a sudden I had pain in my knees, and I had pain in my lower back, which that was a lot more like prevalent in my day to day, sitting and this and that.
Hmm.
So
And
that
that
kind of like
that came,
freaked me
like
out.
you said, without any physical cause, that you're right, no physical injury. You just, like you said, you woke up with it. It just appeared, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was interesting because I slept that night in my childhood bed,
Hmm.
but I hadn't slept in it for a long time. So obviously now knowing now what I know now, it's like there's a lot of like emotions and things connected with that bed, with that space. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
not a
pretty
coincidence.
unbelievable, right? Just pause for a minute there, everybody listening. Like, look, he slept in a bed. A bed's a bed, but it was a childhood bed, right? And the unconscious brain is, again, what we're talking about here. Obviously, maybe making some associations, some memories, and sure, this is what could happen. But of course, nobody's going to think of this. Nobody's going to believe this, right? At the time, you're thinking, oh, must be something with the bed or way you slept.
Exactly, exactly. And it's so crazy. And I'm so glad that everyone who's watching here is in this conversation. I've been, watching your videos and studying and working with you in some capacity. So it's like at least people know kind of what's going on. Like there's like an understanding, oh, it's neuroplastic, it's brain symptoms, like okay, it's up here, it's not down there. By the time I didn't know this, naturally. So now I'm like, ah, now my back hurts. I guess my childhood bed was too soft or something. And so now I'm starting to freak myself out more. Because the knee thing, I had grieved it. I had somewhat accepted it. I was like kind of at peace with it, even though I hated the situation. And I was like, no, my back. And then like right on the heels of that, maybe a week or two later, I started to have pain like in my Achilles, both sides.
Wow.
And so all of a sudden, it's like my knees and my lower back, my Achilles. And now if I'm swimming, which was kind of like my last thing I could do, just kicking would hurt my Achilles. And now I'm starting to like freak out even more and just, I guess I kind of get depressed in a way, like, oh no, like, and the feeling I had, and maybe some people have experienced that, it's like it's falling apart. Like things are getting worse and falling apart. It's like the bottom is falling off.
And you had no idea
So
at this time what was going on. You just thought, man, what were you thinking in your mind? Like, you're pretty young,
like
you're falling apart. Like, what was your mental, emotional state like then?
just like fear, confusion, despair, angry, like being angry at life, like, I don't deserve this. Kind of all of it. And kind of trying to, of course, I don't want to just sit here and be miserable. Like I'm still alive. And like for me, being happy and making the most of each day is such a huge value of mine. So I'm like, I'm having this terrible experience, but I don't want to just like curl up in a ball and cry myself to sleep. So I'm trying to like find beauty and find positivity in the ways I can, but at the same time, I can do the things I love, and I feel like it's getting worse day
Yeah,
to
and
day. I don't know what's going on.
you've already dialed back your life tremendously from, right, competing at a high level, championship level, to try to just accept, right, normal, just day to day stuff. And then you get hit with more, right? You get hit with more pain.
Exactly. So extremely, extremely difficult. And like I said, that really kind of sent me deep into a spiritual journey and really like and that was for me the saving grace back then. It was like contemplating more my relationship with God, my relationship with myself, self-worth, and like it sent me deep within myself and I'm grateful for that because in
How did that
hindsight,
spark? How did that come about? At what point did you feel like you went into the spiritual journey, or how did that happen?
I mean, it was there all along because I've been on spiritual path for more than a decade. But when the back thing started, um, then it's like it got like so much more intense, my experience of all this. And it's like I had to find answers somewhere. I couldn't find answers in medical world. Google wasn't helping me. So it's like I had to find some spiritual answers. It felt like that's the one thing that I had access to and control of. So about a year ago, yeah, just kind of diving deep into like deeper questions about life and why I'm here and why this might be going on, but not from a victim standpoint, from a like, I really believe that life is always giving us like even our biggest challenges are our biggest gifts in some ways. So I was trying to look at it through that lens. And that was really my saving grace. That even though I was going through something really difficult, I wasn't depressed. I wasn't, in a big victim state. I had my moments, but generally speaking, like trying to say like, there's a gift in this, there's a reason, and I got to just be open to it.
Yeah, so that's pause for a moment. That's awesome because that your mindset, right, your attitude was still trying to be positive, and I think that really served you well, right, to eventually come out of this.
Mhm.
You were looking for some growth and seeing the silver lining, right? Even though you were suffering pretty badly, you still had a mindset that was helpful to you to move forward.
100%. 100%. And I definitely encourage everyone at home, to yes, practice everything that you're talking about on the channel and in your teachings and so on, but also just this whole, are we being a victim or are we being a creator? Just that in life in general, but especially in those tough moments. And everyone who's watching this is going through a challenging season, at least as it relates to this situation. Once we allow ourselves to go into this victim mentality, it just makes everything worse. Like
Yeah,
nothing
and
good
it's
comes from
interesting
that.
because that victim mentality can come from right childhood and things where we made to feel that way. And now you're back that way, feeling that way with the symptoms, right? The sensations are so strong, it makes you feel like a victim. So it's easy for people to fall back into that victim mode, right? And to
Hmm.
be able to come out of it,
For
like
sure.
it's so important to see the challenge as an opportunity.
Totally. And of course, I have an immense compassion. Like I said earlier, generally speaking, if you took like a temperature check of my mental state, you'd mostly have seen like empowered, find a way to stay optimistic. But you would have had a few moments of like, oh, right now he's feeling it and he's feeling sorry for himself. Like I went
Yeah,
there
you can't
too. And
help but have some of that. I mean, you're right, you're suffering so badly at the time because you had already been suffering for what, a few years before you started on this journey, sounds like.
exactly. Yeah. So that was 2 years in, and after 2 years, it like got significantly worse. Um, and I think it's useful to mention too that I was going through a breakup at the time.
When it got
And
worse,
when
is
it
that
got worse, yeah,
okay? Yeah, so
I
there's
had
another
just
life change, right? Another stress in a way.
exactly in a beautiful relationship, but in the end, we wanted separate things, so it was extremely difficult and sad. So that's why I had gone back home. That's why I was back in my childhood bed. So now, once again, looking back, I'm like, oh, that's part of what was going on. There's just so much energy moving through my body that it was activating the the sensations. Didn't understand it at the time. But also now I was going through a breakup and my body felt like it was falling apart. So I was just like,
Double whammy.
why?
Yeah. I mean, those are so you should bring in that other aspect, right? So not just the child at bed, but maybe these emotions that you're experiencing around the breakup, which would be quite normal, right? Hitting your body. And that's what people also don't understand that these emotions, if strong enough emotions can activate the physical symptoms. So that sounds like what was happening there, right? It activated some other symptoms at that point.
Absolutely. So clear, so obvious in hindsight.
Yeah.
Wasn't at the time.
Easy to look back on now, right? But at the time you were
Yeah.
going through it, didn't have any idea. So, okay, so take us, so you started this journey. So what did you start to do? You mentioned about this.
Well, so just to it took it a little bit before it got better. So at that point, I'm like, okay, like what am I going to do with myself? And I decided to make a green gesture and go volunteer in Africa for a month. I figure like, you know what, if my stuff's not going well, at least I'm gonna go help other people. So went to Uganda for a month. Definitely didn't make the symptoms better because it was stressful being over there, and it was definitely kind of yeah, a bit of a survival mode being in a village in Africa for the first time, but also was very beautiful. And then from there, I kept on traveling in Africa and the Middle East, and it all came to a head. I was in Saudi Arabia. This is like January 3rd, 2024. So this is this year, this calendar year. I was camping in the desert by myself. I was on a little solo journey. And I woke up one morning and I got out of my tent and just walking around the tent hurt my knees. And so far, I've been spared. I do a lot of walking. I love walking. It gives me a sense of freedom and felt like one of my last freedoms that I still had with my physical body. And that morning, it was like, oh no, now I can't even walk. And that just snapped something in me. And I just started crying by myself in the desert, like just sobbing. And I drove out of the desert. As soon as I had set single, I called my mom and just called my mom in tears, like, Mom, like I can't live this way. And like literally the only time in my life I've had suicidal thoughts was then, of like, why even live in this body? Like this is not worth it. This is terrible. So called my mom in that state, and my mom was like, listen, like come home. And I'd been nomadic for a while around that period. And she's like, come home to Quebec. Like we'll take care of you. Like you need to be with us. You need to be with your family. Like you need our support. And I was like, okay. So then I flew back, and I literally came here with like, at the lowest of the low. But then that's when things started getting better.
So you hit the bottom, and it's a really pretty amazing metaphorical bottom, right? Be in the desert by your own. It's like an old story out of like you would hear, like you're hitting this spiritual right crisis in a way and hitting the
Hmm.
bottom. So you came back home pretty bad in bad shape at that point, right? So that was like you said, not that long ago. That was January of 2024. You'd already been suffering, but that was your low point, you'd say then.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I came back here. I've been avoiding Canadian winter for more than a decade. I was like, no, it's worth it. I'll go back and brave winter. I need help. So I come back here, move back in with my mom temporarily, for logistical reasons, but also like it was really nice to be with her and her partner and just to be like welcomed and just to like be in a cocoon of love, essentially. And my mom's is a retired doctor, and she kind of like at that point made it her life's mission to figure out like what the heck was going on. So at first we did some tests. Went to see a top sports doctor here in Quebec. Did a bunch of tests on me. She's like, "You seem fine to me. Like it shouldn't hurt." And I was like, "Okay, but it does." So then we ran some blood tests because at that point the kind of leading theory is that I had some sort of like autoimmune disease, and that the body was attacking itself, and that's why my joints were hurting. So we do the blood tests. That comes back negative too. So then I find myself in this interesting situation. I hadn't done any of this before. In hindsight, I should have done this like way before, but here we were. And I'm like, okay, it looks on paper like everything's fine, but my experience is that everything is not fine. And so then one day, and thank God for that, my mom, she's like, we're having dinner. She's like, I think I found what you have. And she's like super excited. And it's this neuroplastic thing and it's in your brain. And she's like 10 out of 10 excited. But at that point, I've gotten myself excited and I've been disappointed so many times over the past 2.5 years. Because of course we do research, we find this thing, we're like, oh, this is it. We try it, doesn't work. So at that point, I'm like, I can't go through this again. Like, I can't let myself get excited. So I'm like, yeah, sure, mom. Like, sounds pretty cool. Like, well, listen, I sent you a website. Like, go read it after dinner. And so I go read it, and and it describes like word for word what I've been going through, and it's like an explanation of like, um, yeah, BS and neuroplastic pain and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And that's the moment everything started to change, really.
It was
Like that
like
moment of
big
realizing,
light bulb moment for you. It started to make sense. Something hit you, made sense to you. You saw yourself there. Okay, so
yeah,
yeah, a big turning point. Just getting that information, seeing that. You hadn't
totally.
heard anything about it up until that point.
Oh, because so many times before I was like, I think that could be it. Like with other kind of theories I came up with, and that one there was a list. It's on like a Canadian like pain psychotherapy thing, and they have a list of 12 things like yes no questions, and if you say yes to it, it means you're kind of more likely to have neuroplastic symptoms. And for me, I think I answered yes to like 11 out of 12. Like everything, I was like, yep, 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 yep. And then I was like, well, and at the bottom, like, if you answered yes to 3 or 4 of these, you probably have this. And I was like, well, okay.
And that was just on the heels of getting back some medical information that was negative too, right? So you got some information back that there wasn't any autoimmune, there wasn't any other issues happening, right?
Exactly, exactly. So at that point, I'm like, okay, this must be it. This must be it. The puzzles start to like fit into place. So naturally, like then I let myself be excited and optimistic again. Like, oh my God, this is it. This really can heal. So then start to do research. Read The Way Out, the book. I think Alan Cohen's the author, and that was fantastic. Really highly recommend that book for those at home. Like really good explanation, really easy to read, kind of funny at the same time, and just like okay. And then I started the treatment and started to understand like okay, at a very basic level, what it comes down to is I need to stop catastrophizing and realizing that this whole time, every time I would have symptoms, I would have little, you know, maybe not a freak out, but at least some resistance in my mind. And I would spin out like, oh no, not this again. Like it was better yesterday. It's getting worse again. What does this mean? And just creating drama in my mind and realize like, I can't do this anymore. This is making it worse. It's making me suffer and it's making the situation worse.
Yeah.
So no
The
more of that.
secondary we call these secondary reactions, right, to the pain or to the symptoms were negative. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, once we're, it's like this invisible thing we do, no one around us knows we're doing this. It's our little secret, garden of the mind. But like the moment I realized that I can't do like this is really making it worse. So then really start to use all my mindfulness training of years and years to just monitor my mind. And if I would start to go a little bit into this, just catching it and be like, no. And then switching it to something else, which is like positive messages of safety. And I started to literally hundreds, if not thousands of times saying like, everything's okay. We're healthy. This is fine. And I even like come up with this little song that would sing like, everything is okay, okay, and hey, okay. And I would go on walks, and if I felt pain, I would just sing the song to myself and like kind of like have a little bounce in my step.
That's amazing.
Um,
I love that
and
song. And I want to pause again here because what you said is so important. You did this hundreds, thousands of times. I really want to highlight this because the brain is so powerful, right? And you've had this for so long and conditioned that you need, right? The brain comes in with quick little reactions and you have to counter it.
mhm,
And it's not doing it one time, two times, three times. And I tell people this, you may have to work with this for a while. So the fact that you were right,
mhm.
pretty mindful and aware of catching it and continue always to reframe it and change it, right? Lots of times, lots of times. I think that's what people need to understand. It's not one, two times you can do this.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was just committed. At that point, I was like, this is what's going on. I understand neuroplasticity. I've been studying neuroscience for years. So I know how the brain rewires itself, and I've applied that in other domains of my life. I was like, this is the same thing. If we stop reinforcing the old pattern of dramatization and freaking out and fear, and we consistently reinforce a new neural pathway of safety, positivity, and just kind of like positive effect, like keeping things light and playful, eventually that will become the new dominant pathway. Like that's just how the brain works. It's not that complicated. So
Right.
then I just got to work. Like, all right, let's rep this until it switches over.
So as you were,
Um,
so in the beginning, as you started doing that, sort of catching the negative thoughts and beliefs, catastrophizing and changing it, at first, did the symptoms not change or were they changing right away or did it take some time before they started shifting on you?
Thanks for asking that. So that's important. So there was a gap between the moment of like, this is it, this is what I got to do, let's go. And then I start doing it, but then for like 3 weeks, nothing changes. And like and then that's a little gauntlet that I think most of us have to traverse. And that's really important here to stick with it. Because after 2 weeks, I could be like, well, I've been trying, it hasn't worked, like do this. But I was like, no, I've got to stick with it. And that's extremely important. So it's just
Yes.
like, no, keep doing it, keep learning, keep researching, stay the course. Like this is the path. And go ahead.
Stick with the process. I was thinking Alan Gordon said, stick with the process, stay with the process. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
trust the
such a
process.
big point. And I'm glad you brought it back up and we mentioned it because people give up too soon. It's not working, Jim. It's not working for me. I said, well, you can't,
Mhm.
if your pattern's really strong, the neural pathway pattern's strong, you're going to have to chip away at it. You're going to have to keep, and some people find their symptoms are chronic and persistent and they're constant. So at first it might not change, then it might start to waver a little bit. You might get little windows, right? Maybe you can tell yourself, the audience yourself, how it happened because it was pretty
Mhm.
persistent pain, right? So what happened is at what point did you start to notice little shifts maybe in your symptoms?
Yeah. Well, so just to build on this for a second, yeah, like trust the process became a mantra of mine. Like I know I'm doing the right things. I'm adjusting the process a little bit, making it better every day, but I got to trust it. I got to stick with it. And that was like, that became the mantra. So then I started to go on these walks, and I live in front of a lake. And when I came back, my first goal was like, I would love to go for a loop around the lake. It's like a 40-minute walk. And at that point, I felt impossible because after 10 minutes, the pain was too much. So then I start to go like a little bit longer on my walks and using them and realizing that I'm walking and it hurts. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity to do that rewiring. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And this is my time. Like, all right, it's time to use these tools. And
That's
so
awesome,
I
man. Ding
remember,
again, real quick. Ding, ding, ding. That's so key. It's not like you didn't have any pain, didn't have any symptoms. Before you learned all this, it was a problem, right? It was negative. No way, you're not going to walk. You would stop. Now all of a sudden, it's an opportunity. The way you looked at it, and this is so important. Keep going.
exactly. So the first 10 minutes when it's pain free, it's nice. Like, oh, I'm walking, it doesn't hurt. But the moment it starts to hurt, it's like, all right, now the work starts. You know, the same way as in a workout, you're not tired. Eventually, you start to get tired, and that's when the real workout begins. It's the same thing here. So, oh, now it starts to hurt. All right, let's get to work. Everything is, hey, okay, hey, and and doing all these tools we talk about.
How many times did you play
And
that song
then
in your head? Was it like a on repeat? Like,
I mean, like every day I would go for a walk. I would at least sing it once or twice, and
yeah,
like
that's
it's
awesome.
like
I like
embedded in
that.
my
I really
soul
like that.
forever now. Yeah. And so a really turning point, and you were part of it, Jim. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you because you're the voice with me. I decided one day like, I'm going to walk further, and maybe I can do the whole loop around the lake. And as I'm getting to the halfway point, and it hurts, and I'm getting a little bit scared, I'm like, let me go on the pain PT and let's go find like a video from Jim. Like I need the voice of Jim to be with me, like right now. And I found one of the videos that I can't remember what it's called, but the whole message was kind of like go for it, like go for it, like whatever that thing
Yeah,
you've
get
been wanting
going.
to
I think
do,
it was get
get
going.
going. Exactly. So I was like, I got to the halfway point, and like usually I would always have turned around. And I was like, after that, I'm gonna keep going. Like I'm doing the loop. Like this is a huge milestone for me at that moment. And I've got your voice in my head, and you're like, whatever you've been wanting to do, like it's time to get going. Like, like get going. I was like, yeah, Jim, let's go. I'm going. I'm going.
Well, great. I'm
And
glad
like
that
literally,
you were able to access that in the moment, right? Like right in the heat of the battle, I call it, right? At the moment when you're at that deciding point, oh, maybe I should stop. I can't do it. Like you're showing him, story is going to continue how important it is that we keep going, right? We keep moving through this because once we understand what it is, it's not dangerous and threatening. It feels that way, right?
exactly.
It probably felt pretty bad at that point when you're at that point
It
of the war.
did. And also, when I heard that message and when I really internalized it, it's like I had permission to start doing the things I loved again. That was huge, great news for me. It's like, oh, you can go for a run. Like, okay, I might not go run 10 miles tomorrow, but like you can go run a couple miles and it's okay if it hurts. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing bad. And this is just an opportunity to start to show your brain, like, hey, we're fine. So for me, that was a huge breakthrough. And then kind of became phase two. Phase two is like, it still hurts, but I can do the things I love again. And
Mhm.
that was extremely exciting because I was like, all right, it might be uncomfortable, but like it's just discomfort. It's not a big deal. It's not dangerous. It's not, there's no issue here. It's just a sensation. Not bad. And I can go for a run now. Oh my God, I've been waiting for 3 years for this. And the only way I
Wow.
can do it, doing it is the way that's going to heal me. So, like, let's get going.
Yeah,
And then
so you
everything
really
just
took
changed.
that message in and like you started, right? Started small, just to walk around the lake where you live, and then you just started building more and more. Even though, again, it's important for everybody to hear this, you still had your symptoms. Did they actually ramp up at all during this time, or did they stay like the same, or what was happening in the beginning of you challenging it and getting going?
I don't think it got worse. I think it was variable. So it's not linear. Some days it's worse, some days it's better, depending on my emotional state, depending on different things. Um, but Yeah, I don't think it got worse. I think things really accelerated because now I knew what I was doing was working. Like it seemed like it was kind of getting better. I was doing the things I love. I knew I was on the right track. I had momentum again, and it's like, oh, this pent up energy from 2.5 years going through hell, really. Now I could channel into like, let's start ramp up the training. Let's practice these tools day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out. I think something that's important to mention also that was huge for my story is that I had been nomadic for 2.5 years, and that was an extremely like exciting way to live. And I was traveling all over the place and meeting all these people. But I understand that at some point that it's stressful to live this way. And I didn't think I had a stressful lifestyle because I wasn't stuck in traffic or some of the things I look in the world, I think, oh, people who go through this, that must be so stressful. I didn't have those, but I was creating a different sort of stress for myself, which is like not being grounded, not having a support system and bouncing around all the time. So once I moved back to my hometown, I had the support from my family. I got a beautiful condo in the same building as my mom by the lake. My dad's just down the road. My childhood friends are there. I felt my nervous system just like relax.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
I,
another important piece here. Let's highlight ding the bell again. Having social support, connections. We don't always think it's that important, but right when you're away from it, we don't have that, right? You're alone in the desert there by yourself when your knees are acting up, and we
mhm.
don't think that's a stress, but the brain doesn't feel safe, doesn't feel as supported, right? So you come home and get some social support. It's very unconscious, right? But it does just like kind of the system can relax a bit. It feels a bit safer, right, and more connected.
Exactly. So I invite everybody at home who's listening to this to really consider like what are the big major stressors in your life, and is there a way to diminish them or even cut those out? Because if like the nervous system at large is stress, is on tension all the time, that's making everything more complicated. It's not creating the conditions through which the system can heal. But when we give our body and our mind, our nervous system, the conditions where it can just exhale, and having that support, having that love, having that nourishment is kind of like the antidote to that. Then it's like the soil is fertile for the healing to happen.
Yeah, that's it. And
And
you think
then
about the nervous system, it's like we come home, it's more settled. Think of the word settled. You settled in with your one location versus flight, fight, flight. You're on the run, flight, you're all over the place, right? There's no anchor, right, in yourself. And so I think that's super important. And however way that might be for somebody, right, to feel like they can be settled in themselves or where they're at in their situation. Very helpful.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. And also just gave myself permission to make this season of life more chill, like to not chase exciting, fancy, exotic things so much, which are fun and exciting, but they're stressful.
Yeah,
Like,
that's all
and
adrenaline, right? That's all cortisol, adrenaline, fight, flight chemicals that we can get addicted to in a way, and keep us on edge in a way.
exactly. So that became a big tenant. Is like, how can I make my life as chill as possible? And that was a big adjustment for me. And it's like, it wasn't boring. It was just way more like tranquilo, like chill, and recognizing that in this season, this is what I need. Like, I've had plenty enough of the exciting stuff, but look where it got me. Like, let's really wind it down and find more chill hobbies and just simpler life, and even like listen to like chiller music and meditate more and read books and just like I don't know, kind of like live like an old man a little bit for a while.
Yeah.
And that was really good for me. I really needed that. So yeah, so then I start training again, start ramping up, and realizing that the way out is through doing the things I want to do anyway. So perfect, let's do it. So was really smart to like start really small with everything. Tried to never go past like a 4 out of 10 on the pain scale. That was a good thing. Like a 4 is okay, but if it got to like a 5 or 6, it becomes. And I remember you mentioning this. If you can handle it, it's still fine. Even if your pain is a 7, there's nothing bad happening. But it can become harder to use the Jedi mind tricks, so to speak, when it's a
Right.
7. So 4 felt more manageable, and just kind of ramped up from there.
So you kind of start moving forward. If the symptoms got sensations got a little too high, you'd just back off a little bit and then come
Yeah,
back
yeah.
again. Yeah.
And really take that moment to like slow it down and like, connect with myself and kind of like my inner child and be like, hey, I know this is intense right now, but we're totally okay. This is fine. Your back is fine. Your knees are healthy. You're strong. You're healthy. And just using my affirmations, once again,
Yeah.
you're healthy.
That's
You're strong.
awesome. That's just again, dinging the bell. Like you stuck to it. You flipped it where it's all safety, security, support, affirmative messages in your brain now, continually reminding your brain, infusing your limbic brain with this safety. Hey, we're all right. We're all right. Even though this is 4,
Yeah.
5, 7 out of 10, you didn't flip to the negative, right? Which is what you were doing before.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So then, things actually happened pretty quick. Once I was really on the right track, like if I was to kind of chart it out, it's like, start slow, but then it like really changed fast. And man, I can't even remember the specifics, but like, over probably a month or 2 months, like once I finally got it and like applied myself 1,000% to this and like really made this my main focus of life, within a month or two, things got like, I don't know, probably 90% better.
Amazing.
And of course, that was wonderful. So that was like May, June of this year. And then I was like, oh my God, I think I can start training again. And like, well, I was training like baby training, like just a little bit here and there. But I think I can like actually like ramp up to like full training again. So by June, I was back to 9 sessions a week. And there would be time, and to your point earlier, as I start to do like bigger sessions, um, once in a while it would come back. And that's something that you were really helpful with in those moments. If you start to do bigger things, it might come back because yeah, you're just kind of like uncovering new layers of stuff. That's the way I saw it.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, I did like my first track session, like running intervals, running hard 400s. The next day might hurt, not because something's wrong. And this is really important because it would be easy to be like, oh no, I went too hard yesterday. I was like, no, that is not what happened. It's just, this is a big deal. It's stirring up some emotion. It's stirring up layers of energy inside of myself. Stick to the process. Keep using the
Yeah, see,
tricks.
that's awesome. You doubled down. And that's such a critical moment, everybody listening, because I hear this over and over again. So I always like to say it. People are flipping it the wrong way. They're saying, like you said, oh, I must have done too much. I pushed it too far. No, 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 no. That's not true. Right? It's your brain
Hmm.
is overreacting to something that's still normal. It's just that it's something you haven't done yet, or it's a new challenge. And the brain feels a bit unsure, unsafe, a little bit scared potentially. And then kicks up these protective reactions or emotional reactions, like you said. So for you to stay in the right
Exactly.
standing is critical at that time.
Exactly. So that's really like kind of phase three. It's like now it's a lot better, but there's these I don't say they relapses, but it's just like other layers coming up. And I remember one time I woke up and like my hip was hurting. I was like, oh no, like there's that natural thing, like, oh no, did I do something wrong? And then really in those moments, it takes immense mindfulness to like, wait, could this be neuroplastic? It most likely is. And then like within a week, it jumped to the other side, and I was like, oh,
Mm,
that is, that's a thing that like it does. It moves around, and it's both sides, and it's kind of weird. And
yeah,
going back to that list of like neuroplastic pain acts differently. It doesn't follow the same, and like an injury doesn't jump from one side to the other. That's not how it works. So I had a little bit of fear, I was a little freaked out, and also I was going on a business trip that week, so I had a stressor coming up. And so my dad was driving me to the airport. And I remember I was like, oh, my hips hurt. Oh no, I think I did something wrong. I have to do some stretching. He's like, well, don't you think it's just your plastic again? Like,
it's great. Your
sounds like
dad
it's
side
good.
of
It's
it
on
too.
both
I love
sides.
how your dad was
Yeah. Well, he
letting you
had
know.
read the way out. I'd given the book and he was reading it because his girlfriend was going through some stuff. And then in the moment I was like, oh my God, you might be right. And the moment I accepted it's neuroplastic, then the mind changes again. It's like, oh, messages of safety, do my little song, relax. Oh, I'm a little stressed because of this trip. Let me make sure I like take it easy on the plane, maybe do some meditation and just calm down.
Calm down.
And by the
Yeah.
time I got back from the trip a week later, the pain was gone. So there's been
Gone.
a few of those things that
Yeah,
happen
that's
along the way
amazing
that
to
have been
see that. I've
important.
seen that so many times in my own life and so many times in other people I work with. That is absolutely true. And the more you see it in yourself, right, where you can see that just a stress of some sort, boom, can uptick your brain and nervous system. And this is what it does. It travels this familiar neural pathway, it gives you a physical symptom. And this is where the rubber meets the road. You have to come in and say,
Yes.
wait a second, is this some physical problem or is this the same thing? It's it's TMS. And this is what it does. It moves around.
Yeah.
It's trying to find a different location or any location where it can get you, where it can convince you, don't do this, stay home, stop, basically.
Exactly. And you're so right. This is when the rubber meets the road. And with this process that everyone at home is in at different stages of the process, it's important to do it every day when it's easy and just to like go through the motions. But when it flares up, that's when the rubber meets the road. And that's when you could kind of go one way and freak out again. And oh my God, I got to go see the physio and I got to get some exercises and all this. Or, oh, hey, it's that same thing again. Look how funny it is. It found a new spot that it's surfacing in through. Silly you. And then going through the same things that you've been doing so far. And if we do it right within 2, 3 days, in my experience, it goes away again. It's like, haha, got you.
Yeah.
You're not getting me this time.
That's right. Yeah, and it's hard to hold the line 2, 3 days, right? Some people they fold because it's difficult, but
Mhm.
like it's living proof. Like the more I'm sure you've experienced success, like you said, it is a momentum. It gives you more belief in the process, you knowing what it is that, hey, okay, even if it's here now, it's going to go. This is the same thing. And then it can go quicker. Like same like you, it would take a few days for me. And now if I get something, it can go within 30 seconds or a couple minutes or
Mhm.
5 minutes just because I'm onto it and the brain, I've done it so many times, it just quiets it down. So it gets better and better the more you use it.
Exactly, exactly. So then I think that kind of takes us into phase four, which is where I'm at now. So I've been back to full training for 3 months, 9 sessions a week, bike, swim, run, going hard. And I gotta pause here and just say, like, it's been so amazing because a big gift in this is like these sports I love so much were taken away from me for 2.5 years. And I even got to a point where I thought I would never do it again. Like I had internally to surrender and accept this might never come back. And now it came back, and I'm savoring each training session. Each time I put on my running shoes, each time I jump in the lake to go for a swim, like, thank you, I get to do this. This is awesome in a way I never
Mm,
did before. And I know this will stay with me for the rest of my life. It's a privilege to be active, to be physical, to do those activities. Before we go through this, we take it for granted because it's always been there. Now I don't. Now I savor it and I train with a smile and I cherish it, which has made the training more fun, better.
yeah, maybe that's like again the silver lining. The message is that the way you're training now, your attitude, your approach to it is so different compared to like
Mhm.
pushing and grinding and pressuring yourself maybe the first time. And now here you are in a whole new way of training, which is pretty awesome.
Totally. And my friends, my family have commented, they're like, oh, when you were doing triathlon, like back then, like you're so like serious and uptight, which was contributing, which is like what started everything in the first place. I was
First place,
too
yeah,
serious, pushing too much pressure on myself. That created stress. And that's what created TMS in the first place. Like it's so clear to me now. So now I'm incentivized to like, keep it light, keep having fun. Because if you get too serious again, if you get weird, it might come back. And we don't want that. So let's have
that's
fun.
right. Yeah, that's awesome. You
Mhm.
see that, everybody listening, take that in. It's a really, those are the internal drivers of stress, meaning our own brains putting our own pressure on ourselves, perfectionism, driving ourselves so
Mhm.
hard. Like that pressure goes somewhere and it went into your body. And, but now, like you said, the learning from this is a whole new understanding, a whole new approach. And you're back better than ever,
Mhm.
it sounds like, right? You're getting back to everything you love.
Back better than ever. So I competed in a big race just last weekend, and I won the race. Won the race by
Mm.
2 minutes, and it was just a really beautiful performance, really beautiful experience. And with that, I re-qualified for World Championships. The race I never got to go to that I first qualified to in 2019, and then got canceled because of COVID, and then I started to have these issues. Now, 5 years later, we're back on track, but as a completely different version of myself and a much more mature athlete, a much more mature human, and I think like a sweeter human because I went through all this. And of course now like hopefully I'll encounter people. Well, hopefully I don't, but I'm sure I will encounter people that are going through these challenges. And Jim, thank you so much for you. Like you're doing such like God's work and sharing that work, educating the world, because it's still like the percentage of people who are suffering from this, who know that that's what this is way too small. And I think together we got to like get to a point over the next few years where it's like when people have chronic pain or strange pain, it's like, oh, is this physical? Well, it doesn't look like it. Well, then it must be TMS. It must be neuroplastic. And then let's go into that treatment so that the gap, my gap between having symptoms and starting to treat properly was 2.5 years.
Right.
And like, it'd be great if one day people who go through this, the gap is a couple of weeks, and then they get on the right track right
Yeah,
away.
that's the ultimate goal. I've read some papers around that we need to get to this earlier, because once it becomes chronic, like it did for you and many others that are here now listening and they're getting over their own, right? The neural pathways have become established. So it took some time for you to break them down. But once you made that switch, it happened pretty quickly. I want to come back to that for a moment. Like you suffered
Mm-hmm.
2.5 years more.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the recovery, it was pretty fast. It didn't take you 2.5 years to
Mm-hmm.
get better once you understood this and you applied it, right? You started to come back pretty quickly. So that's what I want people to understand. Doesn't mean it's gonna take you as long. It could take you a while. We don't know, but it can also change fairly quickly once you apply this understanding.
Exactly. And so 2 points on this. One, and my mom keeps reminding me of this, like, recently, and especially we've had like a good cheers on like, hey, we did it. And she played a big role. She's the one who like put me onto this. So, shout out to mom.
Yeah, shout out to mom.
And yeah, seriously. So we've kind of come around full circle on this. And now she's happy because of all this. Now I moved back in my hometown. I live in the same building as her. So now she's happy. She got me closer as a result of
It's a
this
win-win
whole
for
saga.
everybody.
So she got her reward as well. But she was really complimented. She's like, hey, like I really want to acknowledge you. Like you really committed to this, because there's other people in her sphere that we're pretty sure have TMS. And she shared the book, and we've shared some of your videos, and not everyone took it with as much heart as I did. Like for me, the moment I realized this is it became my number one mission in life to honor this process, to do the best I can, and to see this through. Like nothing else was as important as this, because once if I made it through this gauntlet, then I could get my full life back. So really committed like my heart and my soul to this. And one thing that was really helpful is like just I was in your group program for a while, and just like getting a dose of this. Like every morning I would make my smoothie and I would listen to you for 10 minutes, and just getting your energy. And like you have this very calming energy that like once we're going through this, it's like it's scary, it's, even if we're on the right track, and there's just like getting like that dose of like gym energy, like hello everybody, it's Jim from Pain PT. No, 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 no. And just like whatever wisdom you had to share, but it's the wisdom, but the energy as well,
Mhm.
every single day making my smoothie. So I would start my day like remembering, like, hey, this is what I got to do. So really committing to it. And also, I got to be honest, and I'm actually not out of the woods completely. The back, I'm probably like 98% better, but my back is still not quite there. So even though my knees and my ankles and my elbows, that like within a month got better, the back, now I'm still 6 months down the road, and it's steadily getting better, and I'm using all the tricks, but for whatever reason, that one takes longer. So
Yeah.
I'm still in the journey,
But that's going to go
and that might
too,
be a
right?
fit for some
What's going
people.
to eventually go once that brain continues to feel more and more safe and secure, right? It will. And so your 90% is incredible. And in terms of the messages, yeah, I think that's why I do those, like we call them daily audios for people that I work with, groups or individual. I send them out and they take time to make, but I feel like they're important because, like you said, they're just reminders
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, because we need a lot of reminding because it's in the unconscious, and the unconscious is so powerful, so strong. Like you said, you had to sometimes keep reminding your brain over and over again. So that mindset, that understanding, it takes time to reshape the brain. And so yours has been reshaped
Mm-hmm.
tremendously. It's amazing. And you just have a little more to
Mm-hmm.
go, but you know what it is. You're not worried about it. It's gonna go. And you're already well in journey. Look, and congratulations, by the way. I didn't, because you were showing your story. Congratulations on qualifying and that you won that race
Mm-hmm.
and you've
Thank
come
you.
back from the dead. I just think it's such an amazing story. Like could not walk around your tent in the desert because your knees are so
Mm-hmm.
bad. And now you just won a race and you're going to the world championships.
Thank you. What a ride. What a ride. If when I was in the desert, like on my knees crying in January, if you'd shown me a Magic 8 Ball, I'd be like, you're gonna win a big race in August. I would be like, is this thing working? Like this can be, but it can be. And so let, this be an inspiration to everybody that like once you figure this out, and if you're listening to this, you're already on the right track. If you really apply yourself and devote yourself, it can change relatively quick. And on the other side, you will appreciate your life, you'll appreciate your activities, you'll appreciate this body, this vessel more than you ever have, and it will make you a better person for the rest of your life. So clearly, if you're listening to this, you're probably still in the journey, in the initiation of sorts, but there is a tremendous gift in it. And I'm still receiving it every day. I'm still in that process myself. Like it's awesome to be like, hey, what's up? Success story here. But the truth is it continues, with the lower back, and I still got to practice it. And I still got to like keep the conditions that like allow this healing to happen and not go back to my old ways and, be too crazy. So it's a challenging journey, but it's also a beautiful journey. And Jim, once again, you've been an amazing ally to me and everything you've created. And I think I've watched or listened to more or less every single video you have on your YouTube, and just like amazing stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's those videos, I make them to help people, and not everybody can do sessions or can afford them. So I want to provide that content to people. And I get messages from people all the time, but hey, this really helped me a lot. So it gives a lot back to me and to know. And like you said earlier, this is not mainstream, and the word needs to get out. And like that's why we do these success stories. Somebody picks it up on YouTube and says, wow. And there's still a lot of resistance to it. And that will change hopefully. But I hear people get better, and I talk to them and they go back to these like Facebook groups they're in, and they tell people, wow, I'm feeling better. And they try to share the information, and people shut it down. They're resistant to it still. So there's still a high level of resistance, unfortunately, but it's going to change once we start doing brain scans and eventually scan the brain, just like we scan the back, and we can literally see the exact changes going on in the brain that we're talking about here. There's weakness in certain areas. There's emotional areas are overactivated. Cortical regions are weaker. And you described the process perfectly, getting the cortical brain stronger, like, hey, responding, singing the song, sending the messages, making the choices, the decisions, interpreting the sensations as not being a problem. Like you were doing the brain work to shift the neural networks. And now literally, if we could have done a brain scan in the beginning and now, I guarantee your brain will look different.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. And once again, once we understand the process and once we understand neuroplasticity, it's as simple as not allowing ourselves to go down the old paths, just catching it once we start to go down the old path and be like, wait, no, and consciously choosing the new path, which is safety, positivity, positive encouragement, which is keeping it light, which is singing the little song, which is watching your videos, listening to you, and like day in and day out, and it will work. It's science. That's how the brain works. The brain is extremely complicated, and it's also extremely simple in some ways. So once we get that, then it's our responsibility to practice this. But for anybody going through this, I can't imagine anything more worthwhile than really devoting to this process and seeing it through.
Yeah, that's awesome, Philippe. Such an amazing story, really incredible story. And so happy for you, really happy for you. And I'm glad you finished
Thank
the
you.
work, and
Me too.
now you're
I'm
giving it back
stoked.
to other people. Like this story will resonate. People will really take from this. I think that you can come back from anything and get back to even a higher level than you were before. So awesome, man. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your story. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you to you, Jim.